Welcome to the Buried Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Elle Morris. This episode, we have Wanz Dover. He is a producer and DJ. He is a man of many hats and a library of information regarding music, comics, and much, much more. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Buried Dreams Podcast. Enjoy.
My name is Wanz Dover. I'm a musician, an artist of sorts, comic book nerd to the extreme.
I saw on your email that your name is Mwanza.
Mwanza is my full name. Chop off the M and the A and you get Wanz.
Yeah, I didn't know that was your full name.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, thank you.
I think Mwanza is a very interesting, it feels African.
It's a city in Tanzania.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Mount Kilimanjaro?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Mwanza is the city at the foot of it.
I typed in Mwanza on the internet after I saw your email, and it did say that it was a city.
Yeah.
So, did your parents name you after the city, or did they name you?
Well,
how did they come up with the name?
It's a Swahili name, and I think at least the translation I've been told was great wise protector, firstborn son.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
How many?
I have a younger and older sister.
So you're the middle child like me.
Yeah.
We're degenerates.
Or we're the cool ones.
We are the cool ones. We got the most. Okay, my sisters, if they listen to this, are going to be mad. Are you still communicating with your siblings?
Yes.
How often? Where do they live? How do you communicate with them?
My big sister lives in Atlanta, just, general chats and holidays, And then my little sister lives in DeSoto.
Where's that? I feel like I know it.
That's just south of Dallas.
South of Dallas.
She lives with her two boys and my mom. And I talk to her more often, but it's still we're not all up in each other's business all the time. But you get us together and it's just like I saw him yesterday.
Yeah, it's the same with my siblings. I would say, I don't know, we knew each other as kids. Then as we got older, we kind of separated paths, and I feel like we're constantly still getting to know each other as we age. But I'm going to go see my sister in Colorado Springs on Wednesday, and I think this will be the first time we've spent 2 weeks together since probably I was 12.
I can't remember the last time I spent 2 weeks with any of my family, but
yeah,
not since I was a little kid, but
sometimes I'll go home and visit my parents and stay for a couple weeks. And it's always nice. And then it's always nice to leave too.
Actually, last time we spent that much time together was at my dad's funeral. So
yeah. How long ago was that?
7 years ago.
7 years ago. Do you miss him?
Yes.
Yeah. What was he like?
He was a greater man than I could ever hope to be. He was a political science professor. And he fought for social justice his entire life.
And which social justices in particular?
Well, mostly the ones that have to do with black folks. But yeah, but bringing Cornel West to speak at Midwestern State University, which is a total in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is, in a nutshell, the county where I grew up went 80% for Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's usually correlated to some racism.
Yeah, you might say that. Yeah.
No, I didn't look at any statistics, but it's something I can pick up usually.
Yeah. It's a very conservative town, very backwards town.
And you grew up there?
I spent junior high and high school there.
Well, that's I think the prime years where you really, develop into person the first time.
Yeah. Being so isolated, I kind of had to find comfort in my own individualism, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you fit in or?
No.
No way?
Absolutely did not fit in. Not at all.
Were there any other black families around you? Or was it mostly white families or Hispanic?
I live mostly white families in my neighborhood, but, we went to black churches until my parents gave me the option. 8th grade. They were like, you're old enough to make your own decisions. If you don't want to go to church anymore, you don't have to. And I never stepped foot in a church again unless it was a funeral or a wedding.
Why?
I'm not a church going guy.
What didn't you like about it?
The hypocrisy.
That was my experience too.
Yeah, it's largely the hypocrisy. I'm not atheist, but I am firmly agnostic. I have zero faith in organized religion.
I like the idea of organized religion because I think it's people coming together with a common interest and common values to fellowship with one another and worship together, which I think can be beautiful.
It can be great until you get the politics involved.
Until you get the politics, and I start to feel like people try to control others and the convictions that they have, they impose that on to the other members, and it can become a really toxic environment, which was my experience.
Yeah, like I don't mean like government politics, red and blue, all that stuff. I mean the actual inner politics of how churches work, and basically what you're saying. People in charge take advantage of the people coming for spiritual reasons. Mm-hmm. And just a lot of corruption, and it's just
money and power.
Yeah, money and power.
People like to be glorified in a way.
Yeah, not a big church fan.
Not a big church fan.
No.
So you never went to church. I was going to church through high school, but your parents continually went to church after that?
Oh, my parents are good. The rest of my family are good Christians.
Well, I'm happy that your family gave you the choice to choose.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of my friends, I have a lot of atheist friends who are just very, oh, Christians are evil. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, my family are actually all really cool Christians. Actually, they actually, you know, during Thanksgiving, they would go out and feed the poor. And I mean, they were just good. They practiced what they preached.
Yeah.
And they were also not naive to the hypocrisy going on in the church, and they kind of side-eyed it themselves.
Well, that's what you got to do. You just can't get involved. You just show love to those people, and you just can't get involved. It's so easy to get caught up in gossip, and people want drama, especially in a small town.
Yeah.
I don't know about these like big churches. I never had a solid experience with a big mega church, or I just had the small town churches with 30 people to under 500. So my experience is just in those small town areas. But I even feel in high school growing up very isolated in a small town, it was much like this too at the school. I mean, everybody wants to talk about everybody.
Yeah. I stopped in 8th grade, so I'm pretty far removed from it.
Yeah, I haven't been to church in a while. I went with my roommate, and it was an interesting experience. It's just too big. I don't want to complain about it because, everybody worships in their own way. It just wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah.
And so you were in high school, and do you have a lot of friends from high school? I remember I met one of your friends from back in the day. You said you guys I met him at Charlie Star Lounge.
I wonder who that could have been.
We were outside. You're like, was one of my best friends from when we were kids. You guys used to do big parties in the fields.
Oh, no. He wasn't necessarily a friend from high school. He was a few years older than me. He was the first DJ I ever saw, Robert Taylor.
Robert Taylor.
Yeah.
Where was that at?
Well, we're both from Wichita Falls. There was a club called 724, which was like a dance club that shouldn't have existed in Wichita Falls, but did. And he was the DJ there. And I remember going in and hearing a Human Resource Dominator, if you know that song.
No, I don't know it.
And playing lots of old Manchester tunes. And I remember the first time I walked in, he was wearing a Tones on Tail t-shirt. And I was like, oh man, who's that cool dude? And then over the years, we just got to be good friends. And now he's like a big brother to me in a lot of ways. And I was playing in bands out throughout the 90s. I didn't start DJing until the early 2000s. And when I did, he was my mentor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did he mentor you?
He just let me come DJ with him. And I kind of learned some of the early tricks of the trade. I kind of got a preview of what I was going to learn on my DJ journey by watching him DJ. My favorite story is I was doing this party at an art gallery, and I was going to play all this awesome new Berlin techno music that I was so excited about. Granted, this was 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. So just shy of, so probably more like 18 years ago. So, and So I'm playing all this music and I think it's awesome. So therefore, everybody must think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And crickets. Everybody's kind of looking. Nobody's getting on the dance floor. It's just kind of like, oh, okay. So Robert walks up. It's like, all right, well, give it a crack. It's like, all right, yeah, man, I guess they're not wanting to dance. Give it a shot. So he gets on the decks.
It can't be me.
It can't be me. And this is when I got my first lesson in a DJ being able to read a room. He looked around and it's like he just started reeling people onto the dance floor like he was catching fish. And before you know it, had a full dance floor. People were getting down. And I had no idea I was like, how did you do that? It was so mystifying. I'm pretty good at doing that myself now, but 20 years later, but that was the first time I actually ever saw it done.
When you're out there playing, do you play for the others or do you play for yourself?
Both. I'm a firm believer in DJing as edutainment.
Edutainment, educational and entertainment.
Yes. It's like if you can do anybody can do the lazy DJ thing where they play every song is a song that everybody knows. That's the most popular song. But I think it's more telling trick if you can get people onto the dance floor with music they don't know.
I noticed that about your style. I see you DJ with other people, and I noticed that you play music that typically people don't hear, but you still get people to dance on the dance floor. But I feel like you're very much experimenting with what you play when you play it, which is why you're one of my favorite DJs here in Dallas.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do believe in one for you, three for me, general rule.
One for everyone, three for you.
Yeah. So if you can basically I'll play one that's maybe a Stevie Wonder track or an edit or something like that. Something that hey, Stevie, blah, blah, blah. And then the next three will be something that's stuff that's a little bit more obscure, but pairs well with that one track. And people get into the groove of it. Mm-hmm. And not worrying about whether they know the song or not.
Yeah. And so what is your favorite music to DJ when you do? You play a lot of funk, new age, and
my favorite
techno.
My favorite music to DJ is without a doubt techno. It's not even close.
Why is that?
It's as a DJ, it's where I can be the most creative. And I should say techno / electro because I always play them together. But I can be more creative as a DJ because I'm not really worrying about playing the song or the track. So when I'm DJing techno, I'm probably playing a track by itself for maybe at the most 30 or 40 seconds. I'm constant, especially if I'm playing It'll Do in a few weeks and I'll be on 4 decks. I probably won't be playing anything by itself. So, and also I make techno and electro, so I produce it. So when I'm playing those sets, I can actually play my own music.
Yeah, I went to see your hieroglyphic being show in Denton, Texas.
Yeah, I wasn't DJing at that. And that was not my best night.
You weren't DJing at it? What do you mean?
I wasn't DJing at that show. I was playing live.
You were playing live?
Yeah.
Oh, well, why wasn't it your best show?
Because I was the promoter. Mm-hmm. I was dealing with all the stress of being a promoter, which kind of took away from me being a performer that night.
Yeah, I can see that. It's
hard to wear both those hats.
Of course it is. Yeah. Definitely. I totally agree. But hieroglyphic being, when he played, he was so funny to me. He was getting ready for a set and he was just taking his headphones and going so slow, taking the chord, just taking his sweet old time. I love to watch him while he was playing. He's a very interesting guy.
He's a very interesting guy. We met online through mutual Marvel love. He's an ex-comic book collector, but still has interest in the movies and stuff. And he would hit me up every now and then, ask me to explain something that was going on in the MCU or something.
The Marvel comic universe?
Marvel Cinematic Universe, yeah.
You're good at explaining that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's always awkward to proclaim yourself an expert on something.
Why? I think no one's really an expert on anything, but
I'm an expert on comics.
You are an expert.
Yeah. I've been following Marvel continuity in the comics since 1982. I
feel like you could write a PhD thesis on it.
I did just help a friend with a syllabus a little bit for a comic books course, but just a little bit. That's mostly him because he's a far greater expert than I'll ever be. But
have you ever thought about teaching?
Oh, I wish I could teach a course on the history of comics. Oh, I would love that. It's such a rich, interesting history because not just going back with modern comics, but going all the way back into the golden age, just like, late 30s into the 40s, into the early 50s. The Silver Age, which starts in the mid 50s and goes to the end of the 60s. I mean, I think when you look at the history of comic books or comic books throughout history, you're looking at a reflection of the times when those comics were released.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
When you look at comics at any time period, you see a direct reflection of the society that those comic books were born into.
I can see that. They're pretty much translating what was going on into a comic book story, perhaps.
And not necessarily in the literal sense, but like, for instance, superheroes were mildly popular pre-World War II. Then World War II happened and all the superheroes started fighting Hitler. And then comic book sales spiked. Not just America, but troops in the trenches of World War II were reading comics.
So when they would bring the care packages over abroad, they would bring in comic books.
They would bring them comic books for the troops to read. And they could read comics of Captain America fighting the Nazis.
Wow.
Yeah. At that time, superheroes were very much war propaganda. When it came to the Japanese part of that war, they were unfortunately quite racist.
No.
Well, actually, it's a reflection of society at the time.
Yeah. Well, I heard that the, Japanese Americans were going through a lot of hate crimes and prejudices.
It goes right back to what I was saying before about comics are a mirror or a reflection of the society they're born into.
Do you think the comic book writers and illustrators were aware of that, or?
I'm sure they were. I'm sure it was very much on purpose to make them all slant-eyed and buck-toothed and, and then black people were done no favors in comics at the time. They're drawn with big lips and talking like buckwheat and just like horrible caricatures.
That's horrible.
Yeah, but I mean, that was American society at the time.
Well, what that makes me think of is comedy. So comedy, a lot of times when the comedian brings up a joke and people are shocked in the crowd, it's not because they believe it themselves. Essentially, they're creating this joke that shocks you because it's a reflection of what's true in society. And people get offended, people get shocked, but that is making you aware of what's going on in a sense. And I think that's part of the art of comedy. So I wonder if the comic book writers were being racist or if they were
living in a racist society.
So it was
Things
accepted.
Were different. Yeah, they were illustrating within accepted societal norms of the time. I think it's important to define. It's easy nowadays just to lay people as, they were racist. And it's like, well, they were living in a racist time, which is, were those people inherently evil? I mean, no, maybe some of them.
It's just what they learned.
It's just that's how society as a whole in America perceived Japanese Americans and black people.
It's really interesting being a 26-year-old and being on the cusp of, the Generation Z era or generation. And I feel like we didn't get to experience, we hear and we read about it, like these types of, actions and the way society was. And it's so shocking because I feel like right now, how I've grown up is there is racism I see in today's society, of course, but it is like a melting pot. I feel like we're all just seeing each other as people nowadays, especially in my generation and younger. And before, just to hear about how people would treat other human beings like animals, or they have like less worth than the other human being. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around.
There is a generation gap for sure. Because even within I'll be 50 this year in September. And just within my life, just the gap between me and you, what I've experienced is huge. When I was your age, younger even, actually, going to punk rock shows in Deep Ellum, I was running away from Nazi skinheads because they were common in Deep Ellum. That was normal. That was like, Deep Ellum was not like all gentrified like it is now. It was still kind of sketchy. And if you came to punk rock shows down here in the late 80s, early 90s, you were probably going to come across some skinheads. And that was normal.
I feel like the Deep Ellum area now is like very strong in the black culture now.
Yes and no.
It's like a mix.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix. Deep Ellum is not in a good place right now.
There's a lot of, you mean in regards to shootings?
No, they've been running the actual culture out of that part of town for a long time. And it's mostly due to corporations from outside of Texas developing in Deep Ellum. So a lot of that development, those condominiums, a lot of stuff, a lot of that's being done by people who have no dog in the fight. They're not local. They're not from Texas. They don't care about the local culture or preserving it.
How does that affect the area?
Well, they chased out already years ago. They chased out all the artists and musicians that used to live in Deep Ellum, no longer live in Deep Ellum. The people who work in Deep Ellum can't afford to live in Deep Ellum. So now you have a weird, you're drawing crowds that are not coming there for the music and art.
They're coming there to party their brains out.
Right.
Throw that ass back.
I could see a world within 10 years from now. I'd be surprised if there's any music venues in Deep Ellum.
Really?
Yeah. That would be shocking to me 10 years from now. Any of that still existed there.
Well, I heard that's what happened in Uptown. There was a lot of bar life and a lot of action going on in Uptown, and then it got kind of shooty, and then the culture changed, and now nobody's hanging out in Uptown, really.
I never hear about Uptown. It seems like they tried to move a lot of the Uptown stuff to Deep Ellum, but Deep Ellum is not a rich people neighborhood. And they're trying to turn it that way, and it's not working out well for them.
I can't imagine Deep Ellum not having music. Deep Ellum is a special place. I've never seen a place with 150 bars and clubs all congregated in one area.
6th Street in Austin?
I only walked the one street. So in Nashville, they have that one street with all the bars and stuff. But Deep Ellum is like blocks and blocks of bars and restaurants and clubs.
Yeah.
I think it's more circular. And then a lot of other places I go to are like a strip.
Yeah, it's Deep Ellum is big.
It is big. It's a whole corner of town.
Yeah, it's strange considering how little is actually going on there.
I agree with that statement. I am always walking around and I hear a lot of, places that are playing a lot of music or whatever, but there's something missing there.
Yeah, they're not curating arts there.
You know what I think is missing here in Dallas?
What's that?
A gay club that is very dark and grungy and has techno music.
Berghain?
Yeah, is Berghain gay?
Oh, yes.
I didn't know it was like a fully gay club.
The main room, has a leather bar.
I see that a lot in Europe where they have gay bars that are more like techno and dark. But if you come down here to Cedar Springs area where all the gay bars are, it's fun and I love it, but it's a little bit cheesy.
I've never been to Berghain,
I've never been to Berghain either.
I don't think
Berghain's cheesy. Is that what you thought I said? Cedar Springs is cheesy.
I'm going to keep my opinion to myself on that one. But
do you think Berghain is cheesy? You can say your opinion.
I think it's become, I was playing records off of Oscar Ton and following the Berghain resident DJs like DJ Pete and Marcel Detman and Big Clock like over a decade ago, like way before it was like mainstream techno hip.
Oh, it's so mainstream now.
It kind of, yeah, it is.
It's not kind of, it is.
Yeah. Cause like once I remember when I was going to parties in Detroit like a decade ago and seeing all this kind of, BDSM, techno party, dark, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, they don't have this in Texas. All the Utes who have YouTube and can read and learned about Berghain are now throwing their BDSM techno warehouse parts here in Dallas and Fort Worth.
I've never been to one. Why haven't you told me about them?
I'll let you know next time they do one.
And Fort Worth is kind of difficult to drive all the way out there.
Yeah, that's where it's happening though.
I've heard that. I've heard there's a lot of.
And they've kind of come up with their own kind of version, their own spin on Berghain, but it's to deny the influence of that. I mean, even when I was going to every year I go to Movement in Detroit, and there was one year where all of a sudden at the festival, all the day glow colors and neon just vanished and everybody was wearing black. It just, one year it just happened. And I remember being at this one after party and this guy, this shirtless dude with his long hair and his big Jinko pants. You know what Jinkos are?
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
I read it in that
pants.
book.
Yeah.
I read it in the book you gave me, right?
Probably.
They were talking about how those pants were, or there's some sort of shoes
Yeah.
that everyone wore.
Yeah. So the Jinkos were the super wide, the bell-bottom pants. Anyways, so this guy was out there and he's at this party. You could tell he's been dancing all night, but he looks so lost. And then he loudly proclaims, "Man, no one told me that we were all supposed to wear black now."
I didn't get the memo.
And he just seemed so confused. He was like, he had his little glow sticks and he was ready to rave. And everybody was standing around their black clothes and brooding because they were ready for their brooding techno. And the guy was just so bummed out.
I have had a similar experience in Berlin. I went there and when I arrived, it was like in the late night time and everyone was wearing black. And I was like, whoa, I didn't get the memo. Like, why is everyone wearing black? I thought it was a flash mob.
Yeah.
And I tried to go to Kit Kat Club and they looked me up and down and was like, nah, bitch, you ain't coming in tonight. 9. Don't even get back in line because
9.
9.
9.
Hey, yeah. So what do you think about like EDC and that whole rave culture of Plur and with the colorful outfits and lingerie and, you know, it's glow sticks still there.
I mean, you know, that was like kind of standard fare back in the day. So, I mean,
it's still standard fare. Like if you go to, you know, the Miami festival, it's more EDM.
That's EDM. And the EDM is still different from traditional dance cultures. I think the mainstreaming of techno that we're seeing nowadays is largely due to a certain percentage of those EDM fans who just got bored with the EDM music. I wonder why. And decided to dig just a little bit deeper. And you got, you know, if you only peel away 5% of those EDM kids, that's enough to really...
There's a lot of EDM kids.
There's a lot of EDM kids, exactly. So if you just peel like a small percentage of that away, that gives a significant boost to techno, which finds us where we are at now, where it's kind of going through the same thing that dubstep went through. Except for like techno had been an underground thing for decades, where dubstep, it was like underground for like 5 years. And then the Skrillex happened and became super mainstream and all of a sudden didn't sound anything like what it started out as.
It didn't. I went to It'll Do the other night and they were playing some sort of where it doesn't really, the bass doesn't drop. It just like builds up and then it's like dun, 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 dun. And so everyone's just like jumping around and fist pumping. And I was like, man, this music sucks. And people were getting offended that I didn't like the music. They're like, well, you're just like stuck up, aren't you? I'm like, no, I just don't like the music. Like I left after like 5 minutes. I paid $50 for 2 people to come in and it was just terrible music. But some people like it. I mean, they can have their opinion and I'm entitled to mine.
Hey, you know, at risk of sounding very crass and a little catty.
Be crass and catty. Let's make this controversial.
Yeah, let's do it. Basic bitches are always going to be offended that they're basic.
Yes, I agree.
Sorry.
Sorry about it. Not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. The biggest music snobs I've ever met are people who are about as basic about their music taste as it gets. Like, let's take Kanye West fans. They're like, oh my God, you don't like Kanye? What's wrong with you? Do you even like music?
You're putting yourself in a box.
They're like, oh my God, you don't, man, what is wrong with you? Oh yeah, you don't like music. It's like, I don't like Kanye West, so therefore I don't like music.
No one ever is allowed to say Wanz Dover doesn't like music.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, you're just a music snob. Am I not allowed to just not like something? You
are totally allowed. I think
it's
people
like,
just get so attached and offended easily.
They do. And I was like, I guarantee a lot of these people who are like, oh, you're a music snob. It's like, oh, would you like to hear some of my favorite music? And, you know, check out this Merzbow. Or how about some Faust? Eistes and Neubauten. That's, most people would be like, this isn't even music. This is just noise. I'm like, oh, who's calling who the music snob now?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, people are allowed to just not. I do have a problem with people being musically narrow-minded. Me, if I don't like something, I guarantee I've given it a chance. I've tried to be open to it at some point in my life. And at certain points, I was like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, you told me once I said that I didn't like deep house music, and you showed me some really cool tracks about deep house. And you told me that there's always good music in every genre. You just have to find it.
I stick by that. There's a lot of truth in that. I mean, thing is, a lot of people, their music tastes are fueled far more by nostalgia than anything deeper than that, really. Mm-hmm. It's most people, your average person, their favorite music is developed during their like teens and maybe early 20s. And then whatever their favorite music at that point is, that's pretty much going to be their favorite music for the rest of their life.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad.
It's sad,
but it's also reality.
Well, I also hear a lot of people, I don't know. I went out the other night. So I grew up listening to mostly hip hop and rap music. When we'd have dances, it was like, booty dancing to hip hop and rap music. And I guess I didn't really know anything more than that. And that was the only thing I felt like if I went out that I could really get down to and have a good time with. And I moved to Costa Rica and they were playing reggaeton everywhere. They didn't play rap music anywhere. And I was like, this sucks, dude. Like, I hate this. I feel like I can't even enjoy my time because I'm not listening to rap music. And eventually I started to really like reggaeton. When I came back to the United States and all they were playing was rap music, I was like, where's the reggaeton at? And it was the same thing for electronic music. I was just into, hip hop, rap, and reggaeton at this point, moved to Europe. And I absolutely did not like techno. I didn't like house music. And after being forced, all my friends, that's all they would listen to. And those were the clubs that they went to. Eventually, I was like, actually started to favor that music over everything. So it's been interesting how my music taste has evolved over time, but it's after going through a couple times where I've been forced to change my music taste and adapt. I think that's when now I'm like more open to more experiences of liking other types of music. For instance, New Age. I hated New Age because that's what my parents would listen to in the car and growing up, and I hated it, but that all was so cute. And now, after hanging out with you, I think is when you got me onto Wu-Tang Clan. I'm obsessed with Wu-Tang Clan.
Hey, good.
And the second one would be New Age music. I listened to a lot of Depeche Mode and
that would be new wave music.
New wave.
Yeah, new age is something
me.
totally different.
What is new age?
New age is like
New order?
No, that would be new wave. That's new wave. New age would be like the Zen master from the desert. We're going to listen to some blissful sounds of the
Oh, that's new age? Oh, okay. All right, because I know new age is like the new religion of like astrology and like meditation and all that. Okay, sorry, I misspoke then.
New age would be the meditation music those people listen to.
Yeah, those people, no. So I've been listening to a lot of new wave, and I like the Cranberries a lot, Depeche Mode, New Order, and I've been listening to Joy Division, and that's about it. I think I'm just trying to really get to know an artist slowly over time, and then it'll eventually like build up.
Yeah, new wave was the music that was on the radio in late night video shows when I was growing up in the 80s. So I was never much of a Depeche Mode fan, mostly because they're very, very enthusiastic fans, drive me crazy and kind of turns me off. It always has. But that being said, I do like Yaz.
Well, the New Order concert is coming next week. Unfortunately, I can't go because I accidentally bought a ticket the day before to go see my sister and not after. I sold my ticket to my friend, Gaku. But what I really liked about New Order is that they're doing a smaller venue. And Depeche Mode is coming in October, and they're doing the American Airlines Center. I don't want to go to a concert at a stadium. That's like the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, the problem with that, though, in New Order's case, is they're playing too small a venue. That shit sold out in like a day.
It sold out. I mean, the first tier tickets, when you sent me the promo code for the pre-sale, it was sold out literally an hour later.
Yeah.
After a few hours that day, so.
Yeah, that was just too small of a venue. And although I expect that show will be fun, I have a ticket. I don't have anyone to go with, so I don't know if I'm going to.
Do you want to go with Gaku?
Maybe.
He's my good friend. He's so sweet. He's from Japan.
Maybe. But I was thinking about taking the night off.
You weren't going to go?
I'm on the fence right now because I saw the Peter Hook show, Peter Hook and the Light, last summer.
Yeah.
And I know New Order's not going to be as good as that.
Why not?
Well, for one thing, Peter Hook is playing deeper cuts than New Order's going to play. And the bass is like the most important part of like all those songs. So, of course, the bass player's version of it, Peter Hook was one of the founding members of Joy Division and New Order. They are not getting along. So he formed his own band with his son called Peter Hook and the Light to go out and play Joy Division's music. Because nobody was doing that. New Order usually plays like one or two songs, Level Tear Us Apart, Ceremony, maybe Atmosphere. That's it. And
didn't they promise the lead singer that they would never play that music again after he died? They said they would never play as Joy Division. I guess they wouldn't play as Joy Division.
Yeah, they wouldn't play as Joy Division, I guess.
But they would play
and they
the
don't.
songs.
Peter Hook plays as Peter Hook and the Light with his son and great group of musicians.
Two people only?
No, he has a really, really good band that he's put together. And when I saw him, he played all of Unknown Pleasures, all of Closer, then Digital, Transmission, and Level Tear Us Apart. So that was the Joy Division part of his set. So that's 2 full albums plus 3 singles. And then they opened their set with 6 New Order songs. And they opened with Elysium, which I can't imagine New Order ever playing that live.
Why not?
They play the hits. They don't play deep cuts at their shows. I mean, you can look at their set list at setlist.fm or whatever it is, and look at their set list from recent tours and going back even a bit. They play the hits as a nostalgia tour, which I mean, Peter Hook and Light is too, but he formed that mainly to go play the stuff that New Order won't play, which for the diehard fans is the stuff that we actually want to hear.
Yeah, and I'm sure with Peter Hook and the Light, you're going to see more diehard fans, and because people don't know, I think, that so well as New Order.
The lemmings just go to, we're going to go see New Order, instead of going to see the actual good version of it.
Mm-hmm. That's how I felt about the Modest Mouse concert, that they were playing a lot of the deep cuts and they didn't play even their hit songs. But as an artist, I think I would get so tired of playing the same song for 20 years.
Fortunately, Modest Mouse actually had a bona fide underground. They came up as an underground and indie band. So I don't think their career completely hinged on their singles. Although that might have brought them to a wider audience, I don't think their career is completely dependent on those.
They had a very wide audience, but when I went to the concert, it was very interesting because they were all like very millennial, like that millennial group that, loved them in high school. It was just interesting to see how they had evolved into their 30s and 40s. Because the reason why I listened to Modest Mouse was because my older sister really liked them, and she would always run with the older kids a bit. So it was like her age and a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So when I went to the Modest Mouse concert, it was like all those kids that she used to run around with just 15 years later, So it was interesting to see.
What do they look like 15 years later?
They kind of have that. It looked like they were emo kids back in the day. Like emo kids, alternative kids. And there was no one, it looked like there was no one under the age of 30 there. Everyone was like literally in their 30s and 40s. It was not a very mixed crowd.
I could see that. I mean, because I think millennials were the last generation to actually have experienced popular rock bands.
Yeah. I mean, with the CDs and...
Yeah, or just rock bands as a mainstream popular form of music, which I don't think Gen Z has that at all, does it?
I don't know. I don't really understand fully the new generation coming up. I'm right in the middle between millennial and Gen Z, and there's just some things that I observe with their generation that I don't really understand. And I'm starting to feel myself depart from the youthers. I always was a youther, and this is like my first time like going into my 27th year in May that I'm starting to feel a little bit departed from young ones.
I feel that.
I tried TikTok, I tried it out and I don't know, they have all these like new slogans and stuff like that. And I used to be a part of that and now I'm not. So it's kind of weird.
It's kind of weird. I'm actually kind of going through that myself. A little bit different, but similar.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more extreme, but I've always been, I managed to be hip with the Utes for a lot older. And I finally hit a rail where all of a sudden I'm realizing, wait a second, they see me as the old guy.
I don't see you as an old guy.
Yeah.
I see you as like a 35-year-old.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You have a very youthful spirit about you.
That's how I carry myself. But for some of these kids, a 35-year-old is the old guy.
That's crazy to think.
Yeah.
I mean, 35 is so young. And even like 40s and 50s is so young too.
Yeah.
We can call you old in like 10, 15 years.
I am more mature.
Yeah.
I am not old.
Well, age has nothing to do with wisdom.
No.
It can,
nothing to do.
Oh, you're right. I'll take it back. It has something to do, but I mean, age and wisdom, I think, are not highly correlated.
Wisdom is not exclusive to age.
You heard it from Wanz.
Yeah. Because I know some dumbass people my age.
I do too.
And I know some very wise people who are like, haven't even hit 20 yet. So I'm thinking of one person in particular who's actually having a really successful run in a techno career.
Really?
Yeah.
Who is it?
This young producer, Gotham Garg. He produces a decoder and very gifted musician. He's got a good head on his shoulders and he's very wise. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's going to do great. He's going to have a great career.
And where is he from?
Dallas.
Oh, maybe you should get me connected. I can have him on.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
He released some music on his own and I checked it. I'm the admin for the Dallas Techno Facebook group and he posted in that group and I checked out his music as I do everyone who posts their music in there. But in his case, I was like, the heck is this? This is a whole album of tracks that I would play in a techno set. These are quality tunes. Who the hell is this kid? And then he put out another one. Then he put out another one. He's pulled them all down since then because labels were like, you're putting out too much music. And he quickly got discovered by like Jeff Mills and Richie Houghton.
Oh.
He's going on tour with Richie. He's playing Movement this year in Detroit. He's playing Great Beyond Festival.
That's crazy.
He's doing great. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy for him.
I'm happy for him too.
And he deserves it because I remember talking to him and just his knowledge of deep cut techno tracks. It was like, wow, you really care. It was nice because I know people my age who quit caring that much about techno a long time ago. And he is legit sincere and passionate about his love for the art.
I think it takes like an ear to be able to, it takes passion, but it also takes this like gift of hearing the sound.
Yeah. I hate to say that some people are born with it, some people are born without it, but it just is the way it is. Some people are just born wired a certain way that they get it. Whatever it is, they get it. And he's definitely one of those. Yeah. It's refreshing actually to a lot of my peers tend to think they can't learn anything from the younger generation. And I'm like, that's your loss because they have lots to teach us.
Of course they do.
They don't have the hangups that we have, the baggage that, whether you want to see it there or not, can get in our own way creatively sometimes. We get set in our own ways.
You live inside of a frame that
we've constructed ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
the new kids come in and offer that new perspective, and
which is important. And I think if you're going to continue to be a vital artist, and if you want to continue to push yourself as an artist, you can't close yourself off to the newest artists because they have the freshest perspective on it. They're less jaded. They don't have the baggage. They haven't been burned out and screwed over by the industry. They kind of have just a very fresh, youthful take on it.
Yeah, I have a quote for you that I want to read you. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself.
Okay. Interesting.
What do you think about that? Finding yourself would be like, I think we're always like living our life to find out who we are. We're searching like, who am I? But then if you're creating yourself, you get to choose. I feel like on one side, you're not choosing, you don't get to choose who you are. And then the other side of creating yourself is you do get to choose who you are.
Yeah, I kind of like that actually. Because although I do think it's a little bit of both, but I think the creating oneself is probably more important.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it is a little bit of both. Because I think part of life is trying to find your place in it. But sometimes you got to make that place.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think you have a set of tools to work with, and then that are maybe gifts things that may come easier to you or less easy, but it's about the work that you put in and about what you're passionate about. And I think to some degree you can kind of create whatever reality that you really want if you're very consistent with it.
I think that comes into play more if you're someone like me that lives in Texas. Here I have to create. I had to create my space for myself. If I had come up in New York, or not nowadays, but New York in the 90s or Berlin or something like that, in those situations, I think the value of me finding my place would have been a little bit more easier to obtain than creating it.
You think?
Yeah.
I feel like these big creative markets like New York and LA, it's hard to become something because there's so much out there.
Maybe not LA or New York now, but there was a time when even in those cities, they had such fruitful art and music communities that you could go there and you could find a place where you just kind of you find your people, and then you go and do great things with those people. In Texas, in my situation, you have no people. You kind of like, okay, I don't belong here.
It's a little bit bland. I was going to ask you what you think about Dallas, Texas as an artist and where the gaps lie.
Dallas is very centered on mainstream, more so than other major cities. It does not have a healthy underground. Although it has a few music venues, it really doesn't have that many considering how big this city is. It doesn't have much of a music scene considering how big this city is. That's not to say there's not people playing music and they live here. That is true. But it doesn't have the ecosystem that comes with a healthy music scene, i.e. college radio that plays local music, venues that support local music, and more than just a couple. Nowadays, especially with the pandemic, a lot of what you would consider be entry-level venues were wiped out. So the venues left mainly rely on road shows.
I think the standout venues for me here in Dallas, Texas it can be Twilight Lounge, Charlie Star Lounge, Double Wide, and Thunderbird. These are the places that I usually frequent, and that's the places I find local people in music playing.
Yeah, sadly enough, only one of those is actually in a venue. All of them have DJs and all of them occasionally have bands, but Double Wide's the only one that actually has a venue space in it.
Double Wide has a venue space? I thought Charlie's is like a venue space.
No, Double Wide has the bar over there where the DJs play.
Yeah.
Then you have the courtyard.
Yeah.
And then you have that venue room.
I've never seen the venue room.
Oh, well, you need to come see me play a rock show live because we're playing there in April.
In April? Okay, I'll be here in April. I just am going to be gone until the 22nd of March.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the Black Dots are playing there April 9th. Yeah, they actually have a stage with lights and a PA, and it's an actual venue.
Cool.
But that's like, that's it.
That's it, right? I try to think of other places to go. I'm like, I guess it's Charlie's again. I guess it's double wide. And
if you're looking for places just to hang out, yeah, that's about it. There's not a lot of places.
There's It'll Do Club.
It'll Do. I've heard there's Double D's over in the design district. I heard is pretty cool.
Double D's, I've been there. I haven't been when it's lit. It's more of just like very bar like.
I've heard
everyone says good things, but I went once and I mean there wasn't anything special, but the DJ hadn't started yet.
Yeah, no, I heard it gets pretty busy and pretty lit over there. So, and I was considering looking to try and gig over there, but I don't really want more than one monthly because my day job is pretty demanding and I like having free time so I can actually be an artist.
I feel that. It's the same with my podcast, having a full-time job. And then when I was editing the podcast, it felt like, I was putting in 10 hours per week, 10 to 15, depending on if I had to edit as well. And I started to feel like I didn't have any free time. And I just really want to focus on the talking part with connecting with the artists and doing the actual conversation, and then networking, going to art events, meeting new artists, and doing creative direction and creating content under the Buried Dreams vision. I mean, that's the stuff that really makes me excited and makes me feel like I'm being an artist. And the editing, I feel like kind of drags me down.
I love editing, but I'm an actual audio engineer, so that's what I do.
Yeah, I feel like I would like editing maybe music or something where I could be creative while I'm editing, but it's different editing a podcast that you've already heard before. And then also it's like, I don't know, have you ever heard of like movie stars? They don't want to watch the movie that they they acted in. I don't want to listen to the podcast again. I mean, maybe I'll go through and like listen a little bit, but just for quality assurance. But I already experienced the conversation, so I don't feel the need to go back and hear it again.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But Dallas is generally just very, as far as the art and music go, it's very conservative.
If you could change one thing about Dallas, what would it be? If you are a politician and they put you at the head of the arts department and they said, here's all this money, you can change some stuff, what would you change?
I would heavily invest into the infrastructure, getting young folks involved in music, in art, and really nurture that. I couldn't do much as a politician as far as that goes, but we could definitely stand to have some good, well-supported independent radio.
I think we have one independent radio, 91.7.
Yeah, we do, but
it's like rock music. And I have found some interesting artists from listening to their radio, but I mean, one radio.
That's true. There is that one, and
what about funding? Do you think there needs to be more funding for artists?
I don't know if there's anything that a city government could actually do to change what is a fundamental part of just living in Dallas. The culture here is very geared towards very mainstream things. So independent artists do not thrive here.
They don't thrive. I think we have a lot of underground independent artists living here, but there's nothing that really brings us all together. And this could be the venue. I mean, I'm talking to artists of all different crafts. So you're giving me the music perspective, but I also hear the same sort of thing from other underground artists.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really talented people here that have just resigned themselves to the fact if they want success, they have to achieve that success somewhere that is not here, even if they live here. For electronic producers, you absolutely cannot find success here.
Absolutely? Or do you think there's a shot in the future?
It's never happened. And a lot of electronic artists have come from here. Hell, Macioplex is one of the biggest DJs in the world. And before he moved to Europe and started putting out records as Macioplex, when he was still just Matrix, you couldn't get people to throw rocks at him here. I mean, I would go see him and there would be like, 10, 15 people. He packs out It'll Do now that he's an international DJ superstar, but he had been here for over a decade and nobody was paying attention to him. He was putting out records and he was flying and touring Europe and doing all that stuff on a regular basis. I knew him then and sold him a copy of Ableton even when I worked at Guitar Center still. But And I had his Matrix records, and I knew that he was flying out and playing in South America and Europe and stuff. But then him and his wife moved to Europe, and he put out that Macioplex record. And then he ended up being one of the most charted producers on RA's Resident Advisors charts when they still did that, which I wish they did still. He blew up, and he's a bona fide superstar now. But he had to leave here to make any of that happen.
What makes you want to stay here?
My mom.
Family.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Are you still planning to take a trip to Berlin soon?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm gonna probably end up in London first, and once that all gets sorted, then I'm parlay that. I got to get these releases out, so nothing can happen until I get these releases out, and I have a bunch lined up. So,
which releases?
I'm doing a split 12-inch with Mr. Phil.
You are?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear that.
For Natural Selection, is London label.
He has a London label?
No, there's a label in London, and they're doing a split with me and him. And then a bunch of stuff on my own. I'm working on an EP for this Emergency Hearts label, which is a label I did a bunch of remixes for last year. I got to remix some of my heroes.
Like who?
Like Mark Stewart and Lee Scratch Perry. Mark Stewart was the singer in a band that is in my top 3 all-time favorite post-punk bands, the Pop Group. He also, after the Pop Group broke up, he went off and did a bunch of records as Mark Stewart and the Mafia. The Mafia part of his band went on to become Tackhead Sound System. All that stuff's produced by Adrian Sherwood, legendary UK dub producer or whatnot. So I got to remix a song for his record, and it was him doing a duet with Lee Scratch Perry, which
for his record.
Yeah, for his record.
Very cool.
And well, he put out the album, and then they put out a series of remixes. I remixed one of the songs that was on that album.
Nice.
And that was truly an honor. And I did a remix for JG and the Robots and Lesson 7, which was like a legendary Dallas industrial band from the 80s. And this artist named Sign from Austin. She's really awesome, makes great music. And I also did a remix of Consolidated, which was like a industrial hip hop band that I was like super into in high school.
I feel like that's something I would like.
Yeah, you would love them.
I do. I think because of the way that I grew up, I really like electronic music. It has like those undertones of hip hop where it has variation where you can move your body to it in a very...
Well, Consolidated was kind of like the Public Enemy of industrial music.
Really?
Yeah, well, very, 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 very political. And
in what regard?
Calling out fascism, calling out corrupted corporations.
And that's controversial?
It's controversial to speak out. Well, even more so when they were doing it. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably less controversial now.
I feel like now everyone's kind of got that.
Now it's hip to call out corporations, but when they were doing it, it wasn't quite as common.
Yeah.
In the case of Consolidated, that was the first time I actually did a remix or any type of collaboration with a band that I listened to in high school.
That must be a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. And then that led to me in it with Mark Stewart, who's like my heroes. So the label I did all those remixes for, they want an actual release from me. So.
And have you started working on it yet?
Yeah, I'm starting working on it, but I had to actually finish a bunch of other releases first. So I got some techno stuff, some modern classical stuff, some electro stuff, some rock music stuff. I got a lot of releases in the queue. So
you told me about Meow Wolf. They're opening up a art warehouse in Grand Prairie.
Yeah, sometime this summer.
In the summer, and
I have music that will be somewhere in that space.
Like in the room, or how are they going to use it?
The music will be used in one of the spaces. And that is all I can say about that because of the non-disclosure.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it is cool to know that people will be able to wandering through the Meow Wolf, and literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people are going to end up hearing my music in that space. And that's kind of awesome.
Is there any sort of influence you had for creating the music? Did you want it to sound a certain way or have like a sort of theatrical effect? Or
they actually sent for sample tracks of stuff they were looking for. They actually sent me 3 of my tracks.
It's interesting how they found you. Like, I have trouble researching and finding artists that I'm looking for something exactly. If I'm looking for something, it's hard for me to find the artist by just searching on Instagram. I wonder how people do this research.
Probably a variety of ways. In my case, I've had articles in like national magazines. I've had articles in DJ Mag and Resident Advisor. And I've been around 30 years. So somebody's heard of me. And I remember this girl from this online radio station was really mystified. It's like, we don't know anyone that's heard of you, but you have this huge following. How did that happen? I've been around for 30 years.
Word gets around.
Yeah, if you stick around and you keep doing stuff for 30 years, someone's going to hear of you. And in my case, I've actually had people in their like early 20s, late teens coming to my shows and telling me that their parents used to go to my shows in the 90s.
Aww.
So I'm at that age now.
Yeah, but it's good, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. And then I'm like, oh, I know your parents.
You have a generational influence.
I'm like, oh.
The kid's like, yeah, I'm going to head to Charlie's and see Wanz. And their parents are like, oh, I used to see Wanz back in the day.
And I'm like, oh, nice to see your parents on tons of acid.
Don't tell them that. Then they'll want to do a bunch of acid.
Yeah, I know, man. It's like, oh, you don't know this. Your parents used to party.
And with Meow Wolf, are they pulling in all local artists?
Yeah, whenever they go to a city, they use local artists. They use artists from that city to build out their Meow Wolf. I love everything about how they run that business.
They have a documentary out online. Did you ever get a chance to watch it?
I did.
What did you think about it?
I thought they came from DIY punkers.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
I thought it was really interesting how they tried to create a corporation in a sense without hierarchy and how big of a disaster it was. And I thought that was an interesting lesson that they still took the values of not being hierarchical, but it still applied an hierarchy because everybody needs to manage a certain part of the project for there to be a successful, cohesive, everyone has their own clear defined role. There's not conflict.
Yeah, they're very much have turned into I struggle with calling it corporate.
Yeah, because they're corporate, but they've become corporate, but they really reduce back to the values of non-hierarchy.
Yeah, they've gone corporate without losing the value of being a DIY.
Exactly.
It's like they still have retained the values of that. And they treat the artists extremely well. And they gave me full creative freedom. And their feedback was, they're very encouraging. It's honestly one of the best artistic experiences collaborations I've ever gotten to do in my life. It's a landmark for sure. I
am really jealous that you're going to do a meet and greet with all the other artists that are contributing to the...
Well, we already did one and I knew some of them, but yeah, How was it? It was cool. It's just like everybody's an artist doing their thing. And for once, it's nice to be treated and respected as such.
I want to crash that party.
Yeah.
I really want to crash it. I want to get to know these artists and figure out like...
Once they get closer, they're going to have like a public one.
To meet the artists?
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, it would make sense. Make sure I'm there, okay?
I will definitely make sure. The musical director, Benjamin, he found my music and then he went down the Wanz Dover rabbit hole. And, once you find me, if you start going down the rabbit hole, you find all the other stuff. I have just over 10 hours worth of music on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And that's not even all my releases.
I know.
I have a lot of music out there.
What is your favorite work to do artistically? As in my favorite thing to create? Or my favorite thing what part of the process is most special to you? It could be the genre of music. It can be what button you like to press the buttons and make beats on your pad. And that's the part you like. It can be very specific. It can be more general. Honestly, the actual writing music part is my favorite part, especially because I'm always experimenting with new plugins and actually looping it back to the Meow Wolf thing. Since I put a lot of effort into the music I did for them, and that's all I worked on really for like 6 months. And it had been a while since I had spent that much time and focus on just 5 songs.
Usually I turn them out much faster. And because I was able to just focus on that and nothing else for 6 months. And since I was being well compensated, I wanted to make sure that it was of the highest quality I could possibly give them. So by the time I finished it, I went back to my own music and I was like, oh, all this just sounds like before Meow Wolf. And so I brought all these new production tricks that I had learned working on this one project and fed it back into my own stuff. And I really like the whole experimenting with new plugins and ideas. And it's like, all right, what have I not done before in producing a track? Okay, let's try this technique. And I kind of like the R&D, the research, actually.
I've heard this from many artists, like getting a project in where they have a vision for themselves and then they're asking you to perceive that vision and create something based off of how you perceive what they are asking for based off of your previous talents. But it causes you to think outside of the box and focus and you learn new stuff.
It's nice actually, that's what it was. It's nice for an outside influence to give you a target. Because when you're creating for yourself, usually you're creating your own target. But having someone else create the target for you, it's like you still have your full creative powers, just we want you to hit this target. It's nice having that kind of outside focus.
Yeah.
And it brings new things out of me creatively.
Yeah, I think with the photographers that I've worked with, me giving them my vision or even the producers or things like that, it seems like people take it on as a passion project in a way.
Yeah.
Which I think is so fun. I love to get passionate with other artists. It's a blessing to collaborate.
It is. I love producing techno and electro and electronic music and ambient music and Berlin School and all those other things I do. But there's nothing beats playing in a rock band with a gang of dudes, my boys. An occasional girl, although it's been a while since I've had a girl in my band. But
I'll sing for you.
Do you sing?
No. I do sing actually a lot. Just put a little auto-tune on there and I can, okay. It'll sound great.
I had a singer, Jessica, my friend Jessica, who's my singer in my band back in the 90s. And she's still my homie. She's like one of the few ex-bandmates I'm actually still really good friends with.
Who's your best friend?
Actually, my closest homies would be Greg Swindle and Ian Hamilton. Greg, we met in Detroit, even though we're both from Dallas. He accidentally ended up stuck with us on a Detroit trip. We became friends, and now we do Detroit together every year, and we've been like homies. He's like my brother from another mother. And then Ian, me and him have been playing in bands off and on together for like 20 plus years, 20 years, actually 20, about 21 years now.
When is Movement this year?
It's a Memorial Day weekend in May.
Memorial Day weekend in May. That's pretty nice. It's like a good weekend to take off.
And then in bestie number 3, Gerard Hansen, or Gus as I call him. And he's a producer as well. He makes beautiful music.
And he's living in Dallas. Have I met any of these guys?
You've might have met Greg. You probably met Greg. You wouldn't have met Ian because he doesn't come out very much. You might have been in the same room as Gerard, but you might not have met him at a show, at a gig or something.
What is the scariest thing to you about living as an artist?
Not being able to share my art.
Do you feel there are any roadblocks for you sharing your art or?
Lots.
Tell me about them.
Apathy. I was watching a documentary about the band Rush. In the documentary, they were talking about how early in their career, they were going out and touring as an opening act for Kiss. And they would come back to their hometown and nobody from their hometown was like, so? He was like, no one cared. And the British IDM band Autaker said something similar.
About their hometown not giving a shit?
Yeah, it's basically, there's an old biblical saying, goes something like, a prophet is never honored in his homeland or some shit like that. I think someone else said, everyone is a local band somewhere.
Very true.
Yeah. And
you're worried about people being apathetic to you here in Dallas.
I'm not worried about it. That's an actual thing.
It's a fear of yours?
I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it. It's not a fear.
Scary.
It's an unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
That really can tank you out. People have a bias. They're like, I see you. I know who you are. Therefore, they do not value as an artist in the same way they would someone they don't know. And I think that's very unfortunate.
Well, I have to say, Wanz, I really value you as an artist, and I really look up to you a lot. I wanted to tell you that
Thank you. I appreciate
musically, and I really respect your opinions a lot, and I really like to pick your brain about just your life as an artist, and I like to support you here.
I admire you as a curious human. We need many more curious humans like you. The world would be a better place if we had that.
Yeah,
it's inspiring, honestly.
Well, you inspire me, seriously. I mean, you've taken a couple times. I mean, this is the third time you've really, given me to teach me about music or show me stuff on these little, music machines, and you've recommended books, and I always see it through.
And that's why I don't mind sharing that with you. I live to turn people on to stuff. People that don't want to get turned on to anything from me, I don't really have much time for, because that's like literally my whole purpose in life is to turn people on to stuff.
I do. I think that's your calling for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the kid having the right ear and a lot of passion, but I also see a lot of passion in you for music and all different kinds of genres with, comics and Marvel, and you've opened my eyes up. I watched Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always against Marvel, but I watched Wakanda and I really liked it. So sometimes when you don't say you don't like something, which I think can be the tricky line of, there's one side of being a snob and the other side is like, you're allowed to not like stuff. But sometimes when you say, oh, I don't like something, you miss opportunities of finding things that you may actually like.
Yeah. In Marvel movies, I think the biggest mistake on the perception of those films is that they are all the same. They are definitely not. And some may vibe with you, a lot more may not. But, now if you want to see a really good comic book based film that's not necessarily MCU, Logan.
Where can I find Logan?
It's on one of the streaming channels right now. I can't remember which one. Oh, actually, it's on Disney Plus. That is the first comic book based movie that I think got snubbed by the Oscars. It's a damn good movie. It's a good piece of cinema, regardless of the fact that it's based on a comic book character. It's a beautiful film.
What makes it beautiful?
It's the third part of the Wolverine trilogy. It takes place in a somewhat distant future, not too distant future. And something's happened to the X-Men. And Wolverine is left driving as a Logan, his real name, is left to drive a limo to make cash so he can take care of an aging Professor X who has Alzheimer's. The most powerful psychic telepath in the world has Alzheimer's. And with the Alzheimer's, accidentally killed all the rest of the X-Men. So that's the basic setting up of this movie. That's how it starts.
Oh, shit. That's kind of crazy.
So this is the world they live in. The X-Men are dead because a senile Professor X accidentally killed them all. And the only reason why Wolverine isn't dead because he has his healing power. So he's taking care of the professor who's like having these little psychic fits because of, he's dealing with dementia and whatnot.
And so the professor in a way becomes the villain?
No, he's not the villain. Wolverine's trying to take care of him.
And that's it.
And then this little girl shows up who has claws. And it turns out someone made a clone based off of Wolverine. And that becomes his adopted daughter. So you have this whole dynamic of like Wolverine with this clone who's like, is this my kid or what? And then Professor X who's like settling into dementia, even though he still has all his psychic powers, which is dangerous for everybody. So they keep him secluded in this little house just over the Mexican border. And that's the setup for the movie.
It's more character development in a way.
It's a very character-driven movie. And it's just got tons of heart.
I love that.
Yeah, it'll definitely pull some waterworks out of you.
Good. I love to cry.
Yeah, it's a crying film. It's the MCU has yet to make anything that was quite like that. It's mature.
And this is a film that was
it was when
a high grossing film, or
it did all right in the theaters. It did get nominated for best screenplay.
Okay.
For an Oscar. It should have got more than that. But we do live in a world where everything everywhere all at once is winning tons of awards and deserves every last one of them.
Where everyone deserves a lot of awards?
No, everything everywhere all at once.
Oh, yeah. Everyone seems really obsessed with that movie.
Have you not seen it yet?
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Did you love it?
Oh my God. That's not even my favorite movie of the year. That's like my favorite movie of the decade.
Really?
Yeah, that's like the finest, most innovative piece of cinema I've seen in at least 10 years, probably longer.
What makes you feel that way about it?
They take a giant gobbledygook science fiction concept of multiverse and turn it into a relatable family story. And they execute it with kung fu, comedy, drama, romance. I mean, they encompass so many different genres within this one film. And all the actors get to play multiple different versions of themselves. So you get to see some actors doing some real artistic flexing. And amongst, even though you have these like super big action set pieces, you know, there's tons of comedy, but it doesn't undercut some of the more serious and heavy-hearted drama. I mean, it balances so many things. It's like, it's so rare to see a single film do all that. And I think that's why it's getting all the awards.
That makes a lot of sense. When I watched it, you know, something that has really stuck with me is the mantra, nothing matters. And recently I've been dealing with a lot of negative thoughts about, I have this complex. This is a little vulnerable, but I have this complex where I want people to like me. And I think that's a common theme among human beings is people want to be liked, people want to be loved, and people want to be noticed. And sometimes if I feel like, you know, someone doesn't notice me or doesn't show me any sort of action that, you know, they like me as a person, I would spiral in my head thinking like, did I do something wrong? Or I would say negative thoughts about myself just in my head. And recently I've started to do this mantra where whenever I get into a situation where, you know, someone's not really showing that they care much about my presence in the room, and I ask myself, is this going to matter to me in, you know, 3 weeks and a few months and years? Is this somebody that I really care about that is going to matter to me in those amount of times? And why does it matter so much to me that one person likes me in this one moment in time? It really doesn't matter, right? And it's like just letting that go. And so I've been saying, master thyself in my head, because I want to be able to master myself and my negative thoughts and things like that. And so I say, master thyself, and then I think nothing matters. And so that film has had that impact on me. Just even, I watched it last December and it still comes up in my brain. So that also goes to show that it's an impactful film. And
yeah, it's relatable.
It's very relatable.
And it's relatable through truly extremely far out concepts. I mean, talking rocks, which was an adorable scene, but
I can't remember what scene that was.
Oh, it was one universe where they were just rocks.
Oh, when they were just rock. Yeah, I saw that. I love that. Like they were just being.
Yeah.
And I think they took a lot of these like Buddhist concepts.
Yes, they did.
Which I think, you know, not a lot of people allow themselves to learn about Buddhism or other different types of spirituality paths because they're stuck with the once-minded, you know, Christianity. It's like a sin to like think about other things. And so I think they really brought in that Buddhist perspective really well for, you know, just the general American culture to consume. And I think like the act of just being is not very well understood among so many people.
You ever read The Tao of Pooh?
Nope.
You should.
Yeah. I mean, I love reading spiritual books.
Yeah.
It just talks about being and the ego.
Winnie the Pooh.
I was going to say, is this Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah. And there's also The Day of Piglet.
And is it written by the...
Yeah, I got turned on to that at a really young age.
It's not written by the writers of Winnie the Pooh, right?
No.
It's written by someone else who just kind of uses them as symbology.
Yes.
Winnie the Pooh. I can't really remember much about that series. I just remember...
It's by Benjamin Hoff. It's an introduction to Eastern belief systems of Taoism for Westerners.
Taoism?
Through the shenanigans of Winnie the Pooh.
Tao of the Pooh?
Tao of Pooh, yeah.
Tao of Pooh. Let me see. Oh, the Tao. You know what? It's so funny. I always say Tao.
Yeah, I know.
And it's Tao.
Yeah.
The Tao of Pooh.
Followed by the Tay of Piglet.
The Tay.
T-E.
T-E of Piglet.
Yeah.
What's that book called? Tao? The Great Tao? Or no. Tao.
Yeah.
It's a Taoism book, and it has like all the poems in it about the proverbs.
Well, I got turned on to the Tao of Pooh and like in high school. And then actually it would have been after high school. No, it was in high school. And then
Tao De
Tao Te
King?
Ching?
It's not Ching. Somebody told me it's King.
Oh, King.
No, it's Ching. It's Ching. You're right.
Okay.
The Tao De Ching. Yeah. So that's the one I've read.
Yeah, and the Tao of Pooh is basically that, except for
just more English.
Except for with Winnie the Pooh.
Using Winnie the Pooh as the example.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the creation of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet?
No, I don't. I do know that it just became public domain, so that's why we got that Winnie the Pooh horror film, Blood and Honey, that came out recently.
There's a Winnie the Pooh horror film?
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh became public domain recently. So you can't use any of the stuff that Disney created for Winnie the Pooh, but stuff that comes directly from the actual Winnie the Pooh stories is public domain. So someone made a Winnie the Pooh horror film called Blood and Honey. Christopher Robin abandoned Winnie the Pooh, and they ended up like becoming cannibals and eating Eeyore, and got so angry they were abandoned they would kill any humans that came anywhere near their forest.
And it's not cheesy.
And then I'm sure it's cheesy, so Christopher Robin comes back to find out what happened to his friends, and Pooh and Piglet are on a murder spree. I hear it's horrible. It's a horrible B horror film.
It's like a B horror. Yeah. Well, sounds interesting. I feel like maybe I've heard of that before, but I can't remember it.
There was a race between what's going to be worse, this or Cocaine Bear. And Cocaine Bear ended up being halfway decent, apparently. Oh,
really? I saw a meme about that on Instagram, and I had no idea that it's a real movie.
Yes, it is. Made pretty good bank in its opening weekend, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the last film of Ray Liotta.
I don't know.
Famous actor.
Wanz, I have to tell you, there's so many things that I don't know.
You know, growing up, I was fortunate. The whole pre-internet world. You know, nowadays you can curate, what the internet feeds you, and then you don't curate what the algorithm feeds you based on what you feed yourself. But it used to be you just turned on the boob tube and watch whatever it was on TV.
Boob tube? What's that?
Television.
What?
Oh, gosh.
I've never heard that.
You've never heard of the TV called the boob tube?
Never.
Oh, okay.
Add some years to my life, please. I feel embarrassed.
I think it's added some years to my life.
Those years, just give them to me, please, God.
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm qualified for the job I do have is because I was a kid raised by television. So I watched everything. Westerns, classic films. And as much as I hate to go on a tangent, this is the problem with the streaming channels now. Netflix was like, oh, we have this great service. You pay us and we'll send you movies. And you can watch any movie that's ever existed. Okay, now they got you hooked on that. It's like, now we're going to have a streaming service. We don't have to mail movies to you. You can just watch it. And then we're not going to mail movies anymore. We're just doing the streaming service. But then if you look at Netflix, there's almost no movies before 1980. So, and this is the most watched streaming service in the world. So now what you're getting is a few generations of the most uneducated population on cinema and television that we've ever had. People just don't know.
There's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah, you're not alone. The thing is, when I was growing up, it was very easy to be exposed to,
culture and arts.
Bob Hope films.
Yeah. I don't know directors. I don't know I almost feel like there's so much going on out there nowadays that you drown in the information.
Yeah, and you're barraged with the latest, greatest. So there's no real historical curation going on. I mean, I grew up watching Alfred Hitchcock films with my mom.
That's a really interesting concept, historical curation.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching.
Educate yourself on old films, old directors, and famous films, and just interesting things that I think it's really important for me, at least, to be educated and influenced by these older films.
Yeah, I think it's important for society as a whole. And the fact that we're losing that is one of the reasons why we're having a lot of the problems we're having right now. There's no response I hate from younger folks more than when I mention something, they're like, oh, that happened before I was born. As if it doesn't matter because it happened before they were born. When I was a kid, I knew about tons of stuff that happened before I was born. The Beatles didn't happen when I was born.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Last I checked.
I'm just kidding.
Jazz, bebop, that happened before I was born. I knew about all that stuff coming up. You know, I knew about tons of stuff going on before I was born. And I never thought, oh, I don't know about that because it happened before I was born. And I didn't have access to the internet.
Yeah.
So,
but also you were reading a lot of books in a library, and you were looking at a lot of things about music and culture and arts. And I feel like now it's like when you get on the internet, you're flooded with all this new stuff constantly.
People tend to scroll more than they actually read now.
I know.
And they don't learn as much because everything is
instant gratification.
Information used to be, I say this about music, but it's really just information and culture in general, used to be more of a fine dining experience. A fine dining experience that you didn't have to be rich to consume. You know, you could have a fine dining experience with culture. Now culture is largely kind of more of a fast food thing. Like you can get nourishment from it. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing for you, but it's quick and it satisfies that craving, even though what you're getting out of it is not necessarily that healthy. There's a metaphor.
Yeah, no, it's not healthy. And I feel like when I'm spending more time on Instagram, these social media apps, or just even looking at news articles that are meaningless, my mental health goes down.
Yeah, it doesn't help that between the 24-hour news cycle and social media, it's made everyone narcissistic and overwhelmed with anxiety. Maybe.
I do suffer from a lot of anxiety when I'm participating in these things.
Yeah, I mean, because there's so much negative feedback. It's like you look at the news, and when I was younger, everybody in the country got their news from one of three different places: ABC News, NBC News, or CBS News. Before CNN was an actual going concern. Because even during the 80s, only certain households had CNN. I was like, ooh, fancy. So, but everybody was getting their same facts from the same sources. So everybody was working in the same reality. Now everybody gets their facts from a gazillion different sources.
There's so much out there to sift through.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of it is they have a 24-hour news cycle so they can spend 24 hours talking about 2 or 3 subjects until the next news cycle. And they don't really talk about news to inform the people. They prioritize news that will get clicks.
Exactly. So it's more like hysteria and breaking news. They just want to talk about things that are going to, they don't even really talk a lot about like good things.
Well, negative things, as they call it now, clickbait. Clickbait didn't exist when I was growing up.
Exactly.
And clickbait does exist now. People read headlines, and if you see man saves 3 puppies and donates them to an orphanage, kids are happy. They're going to skip over that to go to the headline of man shoots 3 puppies and then dumps them on a bunch of orphans.
You know, and it's true.
And the latter will get like literally like 100 times more attention or clicks than the other one.
Do you feel kind of forced to be on social media as an artist?
Yes. I hate social media. People are like, when they don't get a quick response from me, they're kind of like, you're ignoring me. It's like, no, I'm ignoring social media. It's like,
I don't like to always be available.
Yeah, I definitely don't. And I don't like for people to think, oh, you didn't write me back immediately. It's like, well, I don't get on my social media all day. Yeah. I barely even check my text or my email most of the days.
I'd never get offended if someone takes them 3 days or 3 weeks to reply. Like,
I think younger folks, that's less of a problem.
Yeah. It's more older people, you think?
That are still trying to figure out how to navigate the internet. Yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
They're not raised on it. So they're still trying to...
I know people my age who really like fast responses and things like that. But I would say I'm a type of person who will get back to you eventually, but usually I'll let the messages stack up and then I'll have like some messages there and then I'll go through and answer them all at once. Unless it's like really important.
I'm more likely to answer people at the end of the day or the beginning of the day.
Exactly, that too. Like before bed, I'll just like click through all the messages and respond back.
I look at some people's Instagram stories and I see them, they have like 10, 20 different posts on their Instagram story. I'm just like, how do you find the time? Like,
yeah, once it starts getting in the 20s and 30s of like just and it's every day they post 20, 30 things.
People that do that every day, I'm just like, how do you find time for this?
Well, sometimes I feel like for people like that, it's their job. Not all of them.
Yeah,
but like you'll see it with the blue check marks, you'll see that.
I'm talking people who are just normal people and they're just posting up things they like and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like 20, 30 posts a day. How do you have time for that? I barely have time to put up a couple because I'm like working and living life.
Exactly. The thing I usually do on Buried Dreams page is I'll repost like art pieces that I like just to keep like the picture coming up, just to keep it relevant. And another cool thing I've noticed is like me reposting people's artwork. Many of them respond back to me and they'll say, hey, thanks so much for sharing. And then they'll be from like some other country. And eventually that kind of creates a quick connect of like, maybe I can reach out to them if I'm traveling and do a podcast or something. So it's actually been interesting.
Yeah, I actually 7 years ago decided to, 7.5 years ago, I decided to not post or interact with political posts at all. And 7 years later, I could say it's been great for my mental health.
Yeah, don't. I would say when I was in high school, I also used to talk about like politics, religion on Twitter, and it would just turn into these nasty messes. And now I'm at this point where I have my opinions. I have my political, my religious opinions, and other people will come at me with like maybe very far out their ideas and opinions. And I don't judge them. I just let them speak their mind, and maybe I'll say my thing, but I will not argue. Like, I'm calm. I don't freak out if someone says they love Donald Trump. I just can't.
I'll have a person-to-person conversation with someone. If they say they love Donald Trump, then I'll probably end the conversation.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. You end the conversation. You just don't provoke them, because if you get in these like provocative conversations with these people, in the end, you're just going to be angry. Their opinion's not going to change. You're not going to change their opinion. It's going to make them stand firmer in what they believe.
Anyone who's like a diehard ride or die Trump guy or girl, their mind's made up.
Their mind is made up.
After all this shit that's happened, and they're still in that column, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to change that.
Yeah.
And interacting with that stuff, I like... Every now and then I'll read the comment threads on some of these political, on a headline or something. And it's just like, damn, I don't think the human race is going to make it.
I also believe that. It's like we're kind of running ourselves into a ditch, and like somebody's driving this train. Like,
honestly, with with climate change, situation with Russia and the Ukraine.
Artificial intelligence.
Oh my, man. Talk about Skynet coming into reality. I mean, this is not good.
it's a dumpster fire.
I mean, this AI thing is not good. People are gonna start losing their jobs. Well, it's like they're training AI chatbots for copywriting. Spotify's put money behind AI created music that they can put on their platform and not have to pay artists for. Like, they're already barely paying us hayseed, and they want to pay us, and they just want to cut us out. I mean, this AI thing is not good. It's not. I don't see this having a happy ending. It's almost like the human race is like just testing the planet.
We're like a testing ground. It's like, we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. Let's just do it.
It was like, humans are going to be the end of humans.
They will be the end of humans. I have this theory that technology is going to take over everything. And then the jobs that people have are just going to be content creation and like advertising. And then that's how we're going to like flood the economy with money.
There's
and
not
then
enough jobs for that.
yeah. And then it's just like, there's so many people creating content out there. It's just so saturated.
Yeah, it is. And I know it's unpopular opinion because
we love unpopular opinions on the Buried Dreams podcast.
Record labels were evil. There's no doubt about that. Generally speaking, the major labels were evil. But the record label system acted as a filter. So only a certain quality of music or art would get filtered in through that filter. And now there's no filter. So you can fart in a can, run it through a delay pedal, and record it for 3 minutes and put it on Bandcamp, and it will sell.
That makes me laugh so hard because people probably do that.
I know someone has done that. like it's just like, yeah, there's a creative race to the bottom.
A creative race to the bottom.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means, will we see a Miles Davis or John Coltrane in our life in the coming generations? Will we see a Steve Reich?
We got Dua Lipa.
We got Dua Lipa.
I think the famous people of before are now the mainstream artists of now, which would be like, Justin Bieber, you have Dua Lipa, you have, I don't know, the Chainsmokers, you got...
Right. So
these are those artists, but for today's society.
Right. And when I think of like Miles Davis, this is a guy who had a career that lasted over 5 decades, and he constantly shifted, changed, and he was truly, without question, a musical genius. I don't think you could call anybody making popular music today a musical genius. Although Kanye certainly likes to call himself that, but he is not. Sampling someone else's... I used to get an argument with people about Kanye. They were like, the Kanye music snobs who are like, you don't like Kanye, you don't like music. And it's like, he's a genius. I'm like, all right, well, give me an example. So someone played me this song. It was a song he produced for Talib Kweli. They play me, like, check that, that's genius. And I listened to it and I'm like, okay. So he sampled Nina Simone's Sinner Man, which, by the way, she is a genius.
She is a genius.
He sampled her and then put a whack-ass beat underneath it. That is not genius. That is stealing someone else's genius. There's nothing genius about that. And his entire catalog is basically that. Well,
my last question here is, we've probably discussed this in the past, but for the audience, I want to know, what is your buried dream for the short term and long term?
It's actually short term and long term goal, but you know what an EGOT is, right?
No.
An EGOT is a person who wins an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony.
I think so.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And a Tony wins award for each of those categories. Well, I've kind of had a general lifelong goal, not lifelong, but a long time goal to do something equivalent to that, kind of minus the awards. And to my knowledge, there is not a garage rock post-punk band member who produces techno, ambient music, industrial music, noise, and a few other genres that barely, and modern classical, because I have a modern classical album coming out too, actually this year.
Oh, Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I finished it like 4 years ago.
Oh,
I've just
cool.
been sitting on it. Yeah, well, basically, it's like, as far to my knowledge, there's definitely not, I don't know any rock musicians who also make techno. Not good techno, at least. They might make some EDM or something like that. But, you know, I would like to be successful in all those categories, which kind of hampers my career a bit. If I would just pick a lane and stick to it, I'd probably be a lot more successful, but I'm not wired that way. I have these varied interests and I would like to master my craft in those interests.
Yeah, they always say if you have too many interests and you're not focused on one thing, you're never going to be good at everything. You'll just be splitting up your capability into.
And I'm out to prove that. I'm out to prove them wrong.
Well, I'm also the same as you. I think you're also a very curious person. You also have a lot of different hobbies and lanes that you like to play in. And I think it's fine. You know?
I do limit it to a certain degree.
I have to limit myself too.
But I am definitely more diverse than the average musician.
Mm-hmm.
Just the mere fact that I do play, I have played in pretty amazing rock bands. And I'd say my techno does adhere to the lineage of Detroit techno and stuff like that. I actually learned how to mix vinyl because I started out as a digital DJ, but I wanted to take this craft seriously, which a lot of musicians who get into this don't. They're like, oh, I can hit a sync button now. Hey, I can be a DJ too, which I can do that too. And I have no problem using a sync button when I'm DJing, but I can also say with confidence that I have a significant record collection and I can mix 2 records together.
You sure can. I mean, one time I was at your house and you were like playing some vinyl DJs or some vinyls going back and forth. And there's one song I really liked and I took a picture of the album and I listened to the song and I was like, this isn't the song I heard. And the song that I heard was you playing it over another track.
Yeah.
And that made it so like such a good track.
Yeah. And there's a whole skill set that comes with DJing where a lot of DJs are dismissed by a lot of musicians because they're like, oh, you're just playing other people's music. In retrospect, you know, a lot of people get so caught up in DJ culture, they don't have anything to do with live music culture. I kind of exist in both those worlds firmly. And granted, I had a head start on playing in bands, but I put the effort in. And granted, I'm 20 plus years into my DJ journey, but I did actually learn how to DJ properly.
You did, for sure.
Yeah. I made myself learn it because I wanted to be good at it.
I will learn one of these days.
Yeah. I mean, it takes time.
I have to do one thing at a time, though.
Yeah.
So
I am half of being a good DJ as being a music historian, and I already had that on lock.
Oh yeah, you for sure did.
Yeah.
That's the part I would really struggle with is like reading the crowd and knowing what music to play. I always kind of struggled with that. I'm always like playing the wrong thing.
So I guess my buried dream, short term, long term, is really to release all the concepts that I have in my head. Because I have a very long to-do list of like, and literally hundreds of tracks of music at home. And thing is, I'm sitting on like probably like 10 unfinished albums.
Yeah, you have a lot of music on your computer.
So it's just really finding the time to sit down and say, okay, let's finish this out. So I'm rarely starting something from scratch. I'm like, oh, here's this batch of stuff. All right, let's finish this and get it done and get the album art done and get it out there. Mm-hmm. So my long and short-term goal is to really get all the concepts in my head out to the point where I'm like, okay, I got nothing else to say with all the things I like. So anything else I say is extra. I'm going to take a vacation.
Where are you going to go?
Someplace with a lot of comic books.
You're so funny. Well, since you have a lot of music out there, do you think you could hook me up with a Buried Dreams exclusive for the end of this podcast?
I sent you a track.
You did send me a track?
I don't know if it was an exclusive.
Don't worry, it doesn't have to be exclusive. I will play it at the end, though.
Yeah, I sent you a track and a bunch of photos. I'm going to go label those photos when I get home. So, you know,
okay.
For credentials.
Yeah, your podcast will come out 2 weeks from this Wednesday.
Okay.
But it was so great to have you on, and thanks for coming And doing it a second time because we did it one time before and I was just starting out. You're my second recording ever.
Yeah, and I was better prepared this time too. It was nice having the questions.
I'm better prepared too.
Obviously.
And I think it went really good and I'm excited to put it out.
Keep being curious. It's very inspiring and appreciated.
And you just keep being a music mastermind and inspiring all of us youthers.
Right on. I'll try.
Well, stay tuned to the end of the podcast. We have a track by Wanz Dover. Check him out on Spotify. He has many different aliases. Blixaboy, the Black Dots, and
Jack
Dover, and
Mr. Blix.
Mr. Blix. What about Stereo?
Stereo and Strike is my label.
Stereo and Strike is the label you run.
The Silver Saint.
Silver Saint. And then you're just Wanz Dover too.
And then just Wanz Dover. Yeah.
Yeah, we got many aliases, but definitely worth the checkout. So thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.